The morning I met my doctor, I didn't realize she was the woman who once broke my heart and was hiding the biggest secret of my life. I sat in that sterile waiting room, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the hum of fluorescent lights, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 8 years. Fear. Real fear. Not the kind you get before a board meeting or when the stock market dips. The kind that makes your hands shake when you're holding a coffee cup you can't even taste. They call me Mr. Gray. Not my real name, obviously. When you're worth what I'm worth, you learn to move through the world wearing masks. Different names for different places. Different versions of yourself, depending on who's watching. But sitting there in that clinic chair, waiting for test results that could change everything, none of that mattered. I'd built an empire. 43 floors of steel and glass with my name carved into the lobby. Cars that cost more than most people's houses. A penthouse view that made the city look like a toy I owned. But what good is any of it when your body might be betraying you? When the very machine that carried you to the top might be shutting down? The door opened, and everything stopped. She walked in wearing a white coat, hair pulled back, stethoscope around her neck like it belonged there. Professional, composed, beautiful in a way that made my chest hurt. Her eyes scanned the clipboard in her hands, and for a split second, I thought maybe she wouldn't recognize me. Maybe I could get through this without the past crashing into the present like a freight train with no brakes. Then her eyes lifted. Hi, viewers. Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Time collapsed. I watched the recognition hit her face. Not dramatic, not loud. Just a tiny freeze in her movements, a microscopic pause in her breathing. She recovered so fast that anyone else might have missed it. But I'd spent 2 years learning every expression she owned. I knew what shock looked like on Leora Hale, even when she was trying to hide it. Mr. Gray, she said, her voice steady, clinical, using the fake name like a shield between us. Like we were strangers instead of two people who once planned a future together over cheap coffee and secondhand dreams. I couldn't speak. My mouth went dry. All those boardroom negotiations, all that practice at controlling every situation, every conversation gone. I just stared at her like a fool, taking in the changes 8 years had carved into both of us. She looked stronger, more sure of herself, like she'd walked through fire and come out forged instead of burned. I'm Dr. Hale, she continued, setting the clipboard down. I'll be going over your test results today. Dr. Hale. She'd done it. She'd actually finished medical school. I felt something twist in my gut, pride mixed with shame mixed with regret. A cocktail I didn't have a name for. Leora, I said, and her name felt like broken glass coming out of my mouth. Her jaw tightened, just barely. I preferred Dr. Hale with my patience. Patience. The word was a knife. I wasn't Kalen anymore. I wasn't the man who'd held her while she cried about her mother's hospital bills. I wasn't the man who'd promised we'd build something beautiful together. I was just another patient, another name on a chart, another stranger in her clinic. How have you been? I asked, because what else do you say to the woman you destroyed? She picked up the clipboard again, her fingers gripping it a little too tight. Your blood work came back. We need to discuss some concerning results. Professional. Deflecting. She wasn't going to let me in. Not even an inch. I leaned back in the chair, trying to find that version of myself who controlled rooms and commanded respect. I'm listening, but I wasn't ready. Not for what she was about to tell me. Not for the way this one appointment would unravel every carefully constructed lie I'd told myself for 8 years. Not for the secret she'd been carrying that would make everything I'd built feel meaningless. She opened her mouth to speak, and in that moment, looking at the woman I'd let slip away, I realized something terrifying. I didn't recognize the man I'd become to get here. But she had a secret. If you've ever seen the past walk through the same door you swore was closed forever, hit that like button. Share this with someone who knows what unfinished business feels like. You're not alone here. She looked at me like I was a problem to solve, not a person she once loved. Her fingers traced the edges of the medical chart, and I watched her eyes move across numbers and terms I didn't understand. Each second of silence felt like a verdict being written in a language I'd never learned. The clinic walls seemed to close in, pale blue paint that was supposed to be calming but only made me feel trapped. Your liver enzymes are elevated, she said finally, her voice flat and professional. Significantly. I swallowed hard. What does that mean? It means we need more tests. It could be stress-related, dietary, or she paused, and in that pause I heard all the words she wasn't saying. Or it could be something more serious. More serious. The kind of phrase that rich men don't hear often. We fix problems. We throw money at obstacles until they disappear. But you can't negotiate with your own body. You can't bribe your way out of mortality. I wanted to reach across that desk and touch her hand. Just once. Just to know if she still felt real, or if I'd imagined everything we used to be. But the distance between us wasn't measured in feet. It was measured in years of silence and choices I couldn't take back. How long? I asked. For the test results? About a week. No, my voice came out rougher than I intended. How long have you been here? At this clinic? Her eyes met mine, and for half a heartbeat, I saw something flicker there. Pain, maybe, or anger, or both tangled up together like a knot no one could untie. 3 years, she said. I opened this place 3 years ago. She'd built this. While I was buying my 4th luxury car and closing deals that made headlines, she was building something that actually mattered. Something that helped people instead of just making money multiply in accounts I never looked at. Leora, Dr. Hale, she corrected, sharper this time. And we should schedule your follow-up appointment. I'll have my assistant coordinate with you. She stood up, ready to dismiss me like I was anyone else. Like we didn't have history carved into our bones. I stood too, desperate, reaching for words that might crack through the ice between us. I never stopped thinking about you. The words hung in the air like smoke. She froze, her hand on the door handle, her back to me. I could see her shoulders rise and fall with a breath she was trying to control. You made your choice 8 years ago, she said quietly, still not turning around. You chose the money, the power, the version of yourself that fit in boardrooms instead of diners. I was wrong. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just bitterness and years of hurt compressed into one sound. You're only saying that because you're scared. Because suddenly your empire doesn't feel as solid when your body might be failing you. She was right, and that's what made it worse. She opened the door, and I thought she was going to walk out without another word. But she stopped, turned her head just slightly, not enough for me to see her face, but enough for me to hear the weight in her voice. 90 days, Mr. Gray. That's how long we'll need to monitor your condition before we have real answers. 90 days to see if your lifestyle has caught up with you. 90 days. A countdown. A timer on a life I'd built that suddenly felt like sand slipping through my fingers. Will I see you again? I asked, hating how desperate I sounded. I'm your doctor, she said. You don't have a choice. She walked out, leaving me alone in that sterile room with the ghost of who we used to be. I looked down at my hands that had signed million-dollar contracts, hands that had pushed her away when she needed me most, and they were shaking. I pulled out my phone. 17 missed calls. 6 urgentimètres. A text from my assistant saying the Singapore deal needed my signature within the hour. The world I'd built demanding my attention like it always did. But for the first time in 8 years, none of it felt important. I sat back down in the chair, staring at the spot where she'd been standing. And I realized something that made my stomach turn. I didn't even know if she was married. If she had kids. If she'd built a life that had no room for a ghost from her past. She'd become someone without me. Someone whole and successful and powerful in ways that had nothing to do with money. And I'd become exactly what I'd always feared. Rich, alone, and empty. But I didn't know the half of it yet. If you've ever had to face someone you wronged and realized you couldn't fix it with words, comment, I am sorry below. Sometimes the hardest thing we do is admit we were wrong when it's too late to matter. 8 years earlier, we were broke, in love, and stupid enough to believe it was enough. I met Leora at a 24-hour diner called Rosie's, the kind of place where the coffee tastes like burnt regret and the pie is somehow always yesterday's batch reheated. She was studying for her medical school entrance exams, textbooks spread across a table sticky with syrup residue, and I was working 3 jobs trying to save enough money to start my own company. She looked up when I slid into the booth across from her, exhausted from a double shift, my shirt still smelling like the warehouse I'd been loading boxes in since 4 in the morning. "This seat taken?" I asked, even though half the diner was empty. She smiled. God, that smile. It was the kind that made you forget you were tired. The kind that made 23-hour days feel worth it. "Only if you're going to distract me," she said, but she was already closing her textbook. That's how it started. Two people with nothing but dreams and the stubborn belief that hard work could change everything. We'd meet at Rosie's after our shifts, her from the hospital where she volunteered, me from whatever job was paying that week. And we'd talk about the future like it was a country we were planning to visit together. "I'm going to open a clinic," she'd say, stirring sugar into coffee she could barely afford. "Somewhere that people can come even if they can't pay. Where healthcare isn't a luxury. I'm going to build something big," I'd tell her, holding her hand across that sticky table. "Big enough that money stops being something we worry about. Big enough that we can do whatever we want." We were kids playing dress-up in adult dreams. I'd walk her home to her tiny apartment. 1 bedroom, a kitchen the size of a closet, walls so thin you could hear the neighbors arguing through the plaster. She shared it with 2 other med students, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, because furniture was a luxury she couldn't justify. But when I was there, none of it mattered. We'd lay on that mattress, tangled up in cheap sheets and expensive dreams, and plan a life neither of us really understood yet. "When you make your first million," she'd whisper, tracing patterns on my chest, "don't forget about this. Don't forget about who you are right now." "I won't," I'd promise, kissing her forehead. "You're going to be right there with me. We're going to build this together." Lies we believed because we wanted them to be true. My first real break came 18 months later. A tech startup needed someone to manage their logistics, and I convinced them I could do it for half the cost of anyone else. I worked 90-hour weeks, slept 4 hours a night, lived on energy drinks and ambition. The company took off. 6 months after that, they offered me equity. Real equity. The kind that comes with comma-filled bank accounts and sudden respect from people who ignored you yesterday. I moved out of my studio apartment into a 1-bedroom in a better neighborhood. Nothing fancy yet, but it had a doorman and hot water that didn't quit after 5 minutes. Leora was proud of me. I could see it in her eyes when she visited, the way she'd run her hand along the kitchen counter like she was touching proof that dreams could become real. "You're doing it," she said, and I heard both pride and something else in her voice. Something that sounded like distance. I started wearing different clothes. Suits instead of jeans. Ties instead of t-shirts. I went from beige and worn out to navy and pressed sharp. My calendar filled up with meetings, lunches, networking events that ran late into the night. Rosie's became a memory. Our late-night conversations got replaced with text messages I'd send between conference calls. "I'm building this for us," I'd tell her whenever she looked at me with those eyes that asked questions I didn't want to answer. But I was lying. I was building it for me. For the version of myself that felt powerful when people said my name with respect instead of pity. For the man I thought I was supposed to become. The night she left, we were in my new condo, upgraded again, this time to something with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. She stood by those windows, her reflection ghostly in the glass, and I knew before she spoke that everything was ending. "I barely recognize you anymore," she said softly. "I'm the same person," I argued, but we both knew it was a lie. "No." She turned to face me, and I saw tears she was trying to hold back. The Kaylin I fell in love with wanted to build something meaningful. This version just wants to build something big. What's the difference? She grabbed her coat, and I felt panic rise in my throat like water filling a sinking ship. The difference is that the old Kaylin would know why that's a terrible question. She walked out. I didn't chase her. That was my first mistake. My biggest regret. The moment I chose empire over love and told myself it was the smart choice. The mature choice. The choice that winners make. I threw myself into work even harder after that. Made my first million within a year. Then 5. Then numbers that stopped feeling real. I built my 43-floor monument to ambition, carved my name in glass and steel, and told myself I was happy. But every successful man has a ghost. A moment when they traded something irreplaceable for something shiny. And Leora was mine, standing in her clinic 8 years later. Knowing she'd built her dream while I'd built my prison, I finally understood what she'd been trying to tell me that night. Success without meaning is just expensive emptiness. And I become the richest empty man I knew. But what I didn't know, what she never told me, would change everything. If you've ever had to walk away from someone who couldn't see your worth, comment, "I am enough." Your words might heal someone scrolling tonight. We've all been there, and we're all still standing. The breakup didn't destroy me because I didn't let it. That's what I told myself anyway. I buried the pain under 18-hour workdays and acquisitions that made the business journals write my name in bold. I dated other women, beautiful, successful, the kind who looked perfect in photos at charity galas. But none of them lasted longer than a season. None of them asked the hard questions. None of them looked at me like Leora had, like they could see through the expensive suits to the scared kid underneath. I convinced myself that was better, easier, less complicated. My company expanded into 3 countries, then 7, then 12. I bought the building I used to deliver packages to. I hired a personal assistant to manage my personal assistant. I stopped checking price tags because nothing cost enough to matter. The word success became synonymous with my name in circles that counted. But late at night, alone in my penthouse with city lights sprawling below like captured stars, I'd think about a diner called Rosie's and a girl with dreams that didn't need dollar signs to feel important. I never look her up, never search her name online, or asked mutual friends what happened to her. I told myself it was respect, giving her space to move on. But really, I was a coward. I was afraid I'd find out she was happy without me. Or worse, that she wasn't happy, and it was my fault. The clock was ticking now, though. 90 days until my test results would force me to choose between empire and life, between the monument I'd built and the foundation I'd destroyed. I went back to the clinic 4 days later for blood work. Different nurse, same sterile hallways, same smell of antiseptic mixed with fear. I'd hoped to see Leora, prepared a speech in my head during the drive over, but she wasn't there. Just a technician who tied the rubber band around my arm and found my vein on the first try. Dr. Hale will review the results, the technician said, labeling vials with my fake name. Is she here today? I asked, trying to sound casual. The technician smiled, the kind of knowing smile that said she'd seen this before. She's with patients, fully booked through next month. She's good at what she does. Good at what she does. Of course she was. Leora had always been brilliant, the kind of person who absorbed information like light and turned it into something useful. I'd watch her study at that diner table, highlighter in hand, making notes and margins with handwriting so small you needed to squint to read it. She wanted this so badly, and she'd done it without me, without my money, without my connections. She'd become extraordinary on her own terms. I left the clinic feeling smaller than when I'd entered. My driver was waiting, black sedan idling by the curb, and I caught my reflection in its tinted windows. Expensive suit. Watch that cost more than most people's cars. Haircut from a place that required appointments 3 weeks in advance. I looked successful. I looked powerful. I looked miserable. Where to, Mr. Ashford? My driver asked, using my real name because he was one of the few people who knew it. Kalen Ashford, the name on buildings and contracts and business cards that opened doors. So different from Mr. Gray, the alias I'd hidden behind in Leora's clinic like a criminal dodging recognition. The office, I said, because where else was there? But halfway there, I changed my mind. Actually, take me to Rosie's Diner. Downtown. You know it. You checked the GPS. Yes, sir. That area is pretty different from.
I know. I cut him off. Just take me there. The diner looks smaller than I remembered. Dirtier. The neon sign was missing 2 letters, and the windows had that greasy film that comes from years of frying food and not quite enough cleaning. I told my driver to wait and walked inside. It smelled exactly the same. Coffee and grease and something sweet underneath. The booths were still covered in cracked red vinyl. The floors still checkered black and white. Our booth, the one Leora and I claimed as ours, was occupied by a kid with headphones and a laptop, probably doing the same thing we'd done, dreaming in a place where dreams were cheap enough to afford. I sat at the counter instead. Ordered coffee I didn't want from a waitress who didn't recognize me. Why would she? I'd been nobody when I came here before. Just another broke kid with big talk and no proof. The coffee tasted exactly like I remembered. Burnt and bitter and somehow comforting. "Anything else, honey?" the waitress asked. "No," I said. Then, because I couldn't stop myself. "Did you know a girl who used to come here? Miss Student. Long dark hair. Always studying." This was years ago. The waitress squinted, thinking. "A lot of students come through here. We're cheap and open late. That's our whole business model." "Right," I said. "Of course." I left money on the counter, too much, way too much, and walked out. My driver didn't ask questions, just pulled into traffic while I sat in the back seat feeling like an archaeologist excavating his own past and finding nothing but dust. My phone buzzed. Text from my assistant. "Board meeting moved to 4 p.m. Singapore deal closing tomorrow. Forbes wants to interview you next week." The machinery of my life, grinding forward whether I cared or not. I typed back, "Cancel Forbes. Reschedule Singapore." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, "Everything okay, sir?" No, I wanted to say, "Nothing's okay." I built everything I thought I wanted, and it turns out I wanted the wrong things. I'm 42 years old, possibly dying, and the only person I've ever really loved won't even use my first name. Instead, I type, "Fine, just need to focus on health matters." The countdown continued. 86 days left. 86 days to figure out if my body was betraying me and what I'd do if it was. 86 days of knowing Leora was out there, living a life that intersected with mine only in the sterile overlap of medical necessity. But I still didn't know the real reason she'd looked at me with such carefully controlled pain in that clinic. I didn't know about the secret she'd carried for 8 years. The secret that would make every choice I'd made feel even more unforgivable. If you've ever realized too late that you were chasing the wrong dream, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes we have to lose everything to understand what mattered all along. The clock is ticking for all of us. Don't waste it. The second appointment came faster than I wanted and slower than I needed. 14 days of waiting, of checking my phone for results that wouldn't come, of waking up at 3 in the morning feeling my pulse like I could diagnose myself through sheer willpower. 14 days of watching my empire run itself while I sat in meetings thinking about mortality instead of market share. My assistant noticed the change. "You seem distracted, Mr. Ashford." "I'm fine." I lied, signing documents I barely read. But I wasn't fine. I was unraveling. Years of control and precision coming apart like a sweater with one loose thread that someone kept pulling. I'd catch myself staring out windows, calculating how many sunsets I might have left. Dramatic, maybe, but fear doesn't care about drama. It just cares about survival. The clinic was busier this time. The waiting room full of people with problems written on their faces. Old men with oxygen tanks, young mothers juggling crying babies, a teenager with a cast on his arm. Real problems. The kind money couldn't fix with a phone call. I sat there in my tailored suit, feeling like an imposter among the genuine. Mr. Gray, a different nurse this time, older with kind eyes. "Dr. Hale will see you now." My heart did something complicated in my chest. Fear and hope wrestling for dominance. I followed the nurse down the hallway, past examination rooms with half-open doors, past the sound of Leora's voice talking to another patient in that calm, professional tone that used to be reserved for textbooks and test anxiety. She was in her office this time, not an exam room. Behind a desk covered in patient files and medical journals, a photo frame facing away from me. The walls held her degrees, bachelor's, medical doctorate, specialty certifications I didn't know enough to understand. Proof of everything she'd accomplished while I was busy accumulating zeros in bank accounts. "Sit down," she said, not looking up from the chart she was reading. My chart. I sat. She finally looked up, and I saw it immediately. Concern. Doctorly concern, professional and measured, but concern nonetheless. My stomach dropped. "How bad is it?" I asked, skipping past pleasantries we didn't have anyway. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. A defensive posture dressed up as casual. "Your follow-up tests show continued elevated liver enzymes. Your blood pressure is higher than it should be. Your cholesterol is borderline. And your stress hormone levels are She paused, choosing her words carefully, consistent with someone who hasn't slept properly in years. So I'm dying? No, she said firmly. But you're not taking care of yourself. Your body is showing signs of chronic stress, poor diet, and lifestyle factors that, if left unchecked, could lead to serious conditions. Could lead to future tense. Not immediate then. I felt relief flood through me, followed immediately by shame at how scared I'd been. What I need to do? Change everything, she said simply. Your diet, your sleep schedule, your stress levels. You need to slow down, Mr. Gray. You need to remember that your body isn't a machine you can run into the ground and replace when it breaks. Mr. Gray, still hiding behind the alias, still keeping that distance. I can do that, I said, meaning it. I can change. She looked at me with something that might have been pity. Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're the same man who chose work over everything else 8 years ago. The same man who couldn't slow down even when someone he supposedly loved asked him to. The words hit like a physical blow. That's not fair, isn't it? She stood up, walking to the window. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent to our history. You wanted success so badly you couldn't see what it was costing you. And now you're surprised that the bill came due. I stood too, anger rising to meet her accusations. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't regretted every choice that led to losing you? This isn't about me, she said, but her voice cracked just slightly. Yes, it is. Everything is about you. Do you know how many times I've started to call you over the years? How many times I've typed your name into search engines and then deleted it because I was too much of a coward to face what I'd done? She turned to face me, and I saw tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. Professional composure starting to fracture. You don't get to do this. You don't get to walk back into my life because you're scared and suddenly want forgiveness. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I said quietly. I know I don't deserve it. I'm just asking for a chance to be better, to actually change this time instead of just talking about it. She wiped at her eyes quickly, angry at herself for showing emotion. People don't change, Kaylin. They just become more of what they already were. Kaylin. She'd finally said my name. It felt like a door opening just a crack. Then let me prove you wrong, I said. 90 days, right? That's how long you need to monitor me. Give me 90 days to show you I'm not the same man who let you walk away. She shook her head, a sad smile on her face. You still don't understand. I didn't walk away. You pushed me. There's a difference. Then let me pull you back. You can't, she whispered. And then, so quietly I almost missed it. It's too late. She moved back toward her desk, and that's when it happened. Her hand brushed against the photo frame I'd noticed earlier, knocking it off balance. She reached for it quickly, too quickly, and it tumbled off the desk. I moved without thinking, catching it before it hit the floor, and found myself staring at a photograph that made time stop. A little boy, maybe 7 years old, dark hair, bright eyes, smile that I recognized because I'd seen it in old photographs of myself at that age. My hand started shaking. Leora, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Who is this? She was frozen, face pale, looking at me like I was holding a live grenade instead of photo frame. Give that back. Who is this? I repeated, louder this time. Give it back, Kaylin. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything except stare at a face that looked like mine, wearing a smile I'd never seen before. A face that existed in a life I knew nothing about. How old is he? The question came out broken. Leora grabbed the frame from my hands, holding it against her chest like she was protecting something precious. Tears were streaming down her face now, no attempt to hide them. This appointment is over. Leora, please. Get out. Is he mine? The question hung in the air between us, heavy and terrifying and unavoidable. She looked at me with 8 years of pain and anger and secrets carved into her expression. And in that look, I saw the answer before she said a single word. His name is Aaron, she said, her voice shaking. And you don't get to know him. You don't get that privilege. You made your choice 8 years ago, and I made mine. The world tilted. Everything I thought I knew rearranging itself into a new configuration that made my empire feel like a monument built on sand. I had a son. I had a son I'd never met, never held, never knew existed. A boy who was 7 years old, 8 years since Leora left, 9 months of pregnancy. The math adding up into an equation that destroyed me. Why didn't you tell me? My voice cracked. Because you made it clear what mattered to you, she said. And it wasn't me. Why would I believe it would be him? She walked to the door, opened it. You need to leave. Now. I stumbled toward the exit, my legs not working quite right, my brain trying to process information that felt impossible. But at the door, I turned back. Leora, 60 days, she said, cutting me off. You have 60 days left in your monitoring period. And then we never have to see each other again. She closed the door in my face. I stood in that hallway surrounded by the sounds of a clinic saving lives, and I felt like mine had just ended. I had a son, and she'd been hiding him for 8 years. But she wasn't done hiding. If this scene hit your heart, hit like right now. And tell us, would you forgive someone who once chose ambition over love? Would you give them a second chance to meet a child they never knew existed? Drop your thoughts below. We're all in this together. I didn't go back to the office that day. I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot for 2 hours, staring at nothing, trying to wrap my mind around a reality that had just rewritten my entire past. Every decision I'd made for 8 years suddenly had a different weight. Every late night at the office, every deal I closed, every moment I told myself I was building something important, all of it happened while my son was growing up without me. Aaron. His name was Aaron. I pulled out my phone and did what I should have done years ago. I searched for her. Leora Hale. And there she was, not hiding, just living a life I'd been too proud and too scared to look for. Dr. Leora Hale, founder of Hale Community Clinic. Articles about her work with underserved populations. An interview where she talked about making healthcare accessible. Photos of her at charity events, at medical conferences, cutting ribbons at clinic expansions. She'd built an empire too, just a different kind. The kind that measured success in lives changed instead of profits earned. And she'd done it while raising our son alone. I found myself driving, not consciously choosing a direction, just moving because staying still felt impossible. The city blurred past my windows, the same city I'd conquered, the same streets I'd claimed as proof of my success. But now they looked different, smaller, less impressive. I ended up at a park I didn't recognize. Families everywhere, fathers pushing kids on swings, mothers spreading blankets for picnics, children laughing with that unfiltered joy that adults forget how to access. I sat on a bench and watched them, trying to imagine what Aaron looked like in motion. Did he laugh like me? Did he have Leora's determination? What were his favorite things? What made him scared? What made him happy? I knew nothing. I was his father by biology and a stranger by choice. My phone rang. My assistant. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. I turned it off. For the first time in a decade, the empire could wait. I started following Leora's clinic on every platform. Not to stalk, but to understand. I watched videos of her giving health talks, her voice confident and warm. I read testimonials from patients whose lives she'd changed. I saw the way her staff talked about her, with respect and genuine affection. She was beloved. She'd become the kind of person who made the world measurably better just by existing in it. And I let her go because I thought money mattered more. 3 days later, I made a decision. I called my lawyer, my accountant, and my board of directors. I told them I was stepping back. Not completely. I wasn't stupid enough to destroy everything I'd built, but significantly. I was reducing my role, delegating responsibilities, creating space in a life that had no room for anything except work. Are you sick? My lawyer asked, concerned. No, I said. I'm just tired of being successful at the wrong things. I started showing up at the clinic every week. Not for appointments. I'd schedule those too, maintaining the medical excuse, but early, before they opened. I'd watch from my car as Leora arrived, always 30 minutes before anyone else, carrying coffee and the weight of running a place that mattered. I saw her staff arrive, saw patients line up, some who could pay, many who probably couldn't. Saw Leora treat them all the same, with dignity and attention and care that didn't require a credit card access. On the 4th week, I did something crazy. I donated to her clinic. Anonymously. A significant amount. Enough to expand, to hire more staff, to help more people. I didn't want recognition. I wanted to be useful. I wanted to contribute to something that mattered instead of just accumulating more of what I already had too much of. 2 weeks later, I saw the announcement. Hale Community Clinic was expanding. New wing, new equipment, new programs for maternal health and pediatric care. Leora's quote in the press release. This is what happens when people believe in community over profit. We're proving that healthcare can be both excellent and accessible. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose that didn't come with a profit margin attached. 45 days left in my monitoring period. 45 days until Leora could cut me out of her professional life forever. I lost weight, started sleeping better, my stress levels dropping because I'd stopped treating my body like a machine that existed only to serve my ambition. I was changing, actually changing, not just talking about it. But I still hadn't seen Aaron, still hadn't heard his voice, still didn't know if Leora would ever give me that chance. Then one evening, as I sat in my car outside the clinic doing my usual observation that definitely crossed into creepy territory, I saw them. Leora walked out holding the hand of a little boy in a blue backpack. Aaron, my son, right there, 30 feet away, laughing at something his mother said. My heart stopped. He was beautiful, all energy and curiosity and life. He jumped over cracks in the sidewalk, making a game of it, and Leora smiled at him with such pure love it made my chest ache. They got into an older model sedan, practical, reliable, nothing like the luxury cars I collected, and drove away. And I sat there crying like I hadn't cried since I was a child myself, grieving for 8 years of moments I'd never get back. First steps, first words, first days of school, scraped knees and bad dreams, and all the tiny miracles that make up a childhood. Gone. All of it gone because I've been too busy building monuments to notice I was demolishing the foundation. I drove home that night and stood in my penthouse looking at city lights that used to make me feel powerful. Now they just look cold, distant, like stars that were beautiful but couldn't keep you warm. I've been so focused on rising above everyone that I've forgotten what it felt like to be grounded in something real. Once lost in ambition, now searching for meaning. The countdown continued, but I was different now. Not fixed. You don't fix 8 years of mistakes in a few weeks, but aware. Awake. Finally understanding that the life I'd built was expensive, but empty. And somewhere out there, my son was going to bed not knowing his father existed. That had to change. But I still didn't know Leora's real power. I didn't know what she was capable of. I didn't know that forgiveness could be a weapon sharper than revenge. If you believe in second chances, drop a heart below. Someone needs to know that love can heal even after years of silence. Even when you think you've lost everything, there's still hope. Don't give up. The meeting happened because I begged. Not with words at first, with actions. I kept showing up for my appointments, kept following my treatment plan, kept making changes that Leora could measure in my blood work and vital signs. I donated again to the clinic, then again, each time anonymously, each time hoping she'd somehow know it was me trying to be useful. I sold one of my cars, then another, liquidated investments that served no purpose except making rich men feel richer. I started volunteering at a food bank on Saturdays, something I'd never done before, and discovered that being helpful felt better than being powerful. Small changes, quiet changes, the kind that don't make headlines but rearrange your soul. 30 days left. I'd improved enough that Leora seemed almost disappointed she couldn't find anything wrong with me anymore. My liver enzymes normalized. Blood pressure dropped. I'd lost 15 pounds, started running in the mornings, stopped eating meals that came in takeout containers at midnight. "You're doing well," she said during what was supposed to be my final follow-up. Clinical, professional, distant. "I want to meet him," I said, abandoning all pretense. "Please." She closed my chart. "No, Leora, you don't get to decide you're ready and expect me to risk my son's emotional well-being on your redemption arc," she said, her voice sharp. "He's not a prop in your journey to becoming a better person. That's not what isn't it?" She stood up, pacing her small office. "You've spent 8 years building an empire. Now you're scared, and suddenly you want to play father? What happens when you get bored? When work calls and you remember how good it felt to close deals? What happens to Aaron when you realize being a parent is harder than signing checks? Every word was a knife, and every word was deserved. I don't know, I admitted. I don't know how to be a father. I don't know if I'll be any good at it. But I want to try. Doesn't that count for something? Trying isn't enough when you're dealing with a child's heart, she said quietly. He's 7 years old. He has friends in school and a life that works. Introducing his absent father doesn't fix anything. It just creates questions I don't know how to answer. Then let me answer them, I said. Let me be honest with him. Kids can handle truth better than we think. She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the war happening behind her eyes. The mother protecting her child versus the woman who'd once loved me. The doctor who'd taken an oath to heal versus the person who'd been hurt. One meeting, she finally said, supervised, at the park, 1 hour. And if he seems uncomfortable or upset, we leave immediately. Yes, I said quickly, before she could change her mind. Anything. Thank you. Don't thank me, she said. Earn it. The park meeting was scheduled for a Saturday. 3 days away. 72 hours to figure out how to talk to a 7-year-old who didn't know I existed. I bought books about parenting, actually bought and read them, not just downloaded to look impressive. I talked to my assistant, who had 2 kids, about what 7-year-olds liked. Just be yourself, she said. Kids can smell fake from a mile away. But myself was the problem. Myself was a workaholic who'd forgotten how to be human. Myself was the reason I was in this mess. Saturday came too fast and not fast enough. I showed up early, wearing jeans and a regular shirt, nothing fancy. Leora was already there with Aaron, sitting on a bench. He was kicking at pebbles, full of energy, completely unaware that his life was about to change. Leora saw me approaching and put her hand on Aaron's shoulder, said something I couldn't hear. He looked up at me with curious eyes, no fear, just the open assessment that kids do before deciding if you're worth their attention. Aaron, this is Kalen, Leora said carefully. He's an old friend of mine. Friend, not father. Not yet. Maybe never. Hi, Aaron said, waving. Hi, I said, and my voice cracked. I cleared my throat, tried again. It's really nice to meet you. Mom says you've been sick, he said matter-of-factly. Are you better now? Getting there, I said. Your mom's a really good doctor. The best, he agreed with such certainty it made me smile. We walked toward the playground. Leora stayed close, watching every interaction like a guardian angel ready to intervene. Aaron asked me questions, normal kid questions about what I did for work, if I had any pets, what my favorite color was. I answered honestly, keeping it simple, and somewhere in that conversation, something unexpected happened. I relaxed, stopped trying to be perfect, just talked to him like he was a person, because he was. Want to see me on a monkey bars? He asked. Absolutely. I watched him play, fearless and agile, and saw pieces of myself and pieces of Leora blended into someone completely new. Someone good, someone untouched by our mistakes and full of possibility. When the hour ended, he hugged Leora goodbye and then, unexpectedly, offered me his hand to shake. Formal, sweet, perfect. It was nice meeting you, Kalen, he said seriously. You too, Aaron. I managed, shaking his small hand. Really nice. After he ran ahead to the car, Leora turned to me. That went better than I expected. Can I see him again? I asked, hopeful. She hesitated. Maybe. Let me think about it. It wasn't yes, but it wasn't no. And for the first time in 8 years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild what I destroyed. But I still didn't understand Leora's real plan. I didn't know what she was building. I didn't know that her forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was strategy. And her next move would change everything. If you've ever realized success means nothing without peace, comment, I choose love. Share this with someone chasing the wrong dream. Sometimes the biggest win is knowing when to stop fighting and start healing. The news broke 3 weeks later, and I wasn't prepared for it. Millionaire philanthropist Kalen Ashford steps back from empire to focus on community work. The headline appeared in every major business publication. Photos of me at the food bank, at community centers volunteering at, of all places, Hale Community Clinic. Someone had been documenting my changes. Someone had been watching. My phone exploded. Calls from journalists wanting interviews. Messages from colleagues confused about my transformation. Emails from charities suddenly very interested in my time and money. The machinery of public interest grinding into gear. But I didn't care about any of that. I cared about the call from Leora. "Did you do this?" she asked when I answered. "No," I said honestly. "I've been trying to keep everything quiet. I don't want publicity. I just want to be better," she finished. "I know. I've been watching." Silence on the line, heavy with meaning. "I was the one who documented it," she said finally. "I hired someone to follow you, to see if you were serious or just performing." I should have been angry, should have felt violated, but instead I felt relieved. She'd been paying attention, checking on me, making sure I wasn't just another rich guy having a midlife crisis. And I asked, "What did you find?" "That you're trying," she said softly. "Really trying. And that means something." 2 days later, I got an invitation. Formal, printed, delivered by courier. The Hale Community Clinic Annual Gala. Black tie, fundraiser. And at the bottom, in handwriting I recognized, "Please come, Ed." The gala was different from the charity events I usually attended. Smaller, more intimate. People there actually cared about the cause instead of just being seen caring. Doctors and nurses mingling with community leaders and donors who'd given $5 or $5,000, all treated with equal respect. And Leora, standing at the center of it all in a simple black dress, commanding the room not with wealth but with purpose. She was magnetic, a sun that people orbited naturally, drawn to her warmth and genuine passion. I hung back at first, unsure of my place here. This was her world, her triumph. I was just a guest trying not to ruin anything. But then she spotted me and smiled. A real smile. The first one she'd given me since I'd walked back in her life. She made her way over, graceful, confident. "You came. You invited me," I said. "I'd have crawled here if I had to." She laughed, and the sound was everything. Dramatic as always. "Some things don't change," I admitted. "And some things do," she said, looking at me with evaluation that felt different from before. Warmer. "I have something to tell you." My heart rate picked up. "Okay, I'm making an announcement tonight," she said. "And I wanted you to know first. You're part of it." "Part of what?" Before she could answer, someone called her to the stage. She squeezed my arm, a brief touch that felt like forgiveness, and walked away. I watched her take the microphone, the room quieting immediately. That's what respect looked like. Not demanded, earned. "Thank you all for being here," she began. "This clinic started as a dream in a diner 8 years ago. A belief that healthcare should be a right, not a privilege. That success should be measured in lives changed, not profits earned." People nodded, listening intently. "But dreams require resources," she continued. "And recently, we receive an anonymous donation that will allow us to expand in ways I never thought possible. New wings, new programs, new opportunities to serve our community." Applause, warm and genuine. "Tonight, I want to acknowledge the person behind those donations," she said, and my stomach dropped. Kalen Ashford has chosen to use his resources not for recognition, but for impact. He's donated $500,000 to this clinic. But more than that, he's donated his time, his effort, his genuine commitment to being part of the solution. The room turned to look at me. Cameras flashed. I felt exposed and terrified and somehow proud all at once. "Kalen, would you join me?" Leora asked from a stage. I walked up there on legs that didn't feel quite steady. Stood next to her under lights that felt too bright. "I'm not good at speeches," I said into the microphone. "I'm better at signing checks than explaining why. But I'll try." I looked at Leora, then at the crowd, then back at her. 8 years ago, I made a choice," I said. "I chose ambition over love. I chose success over meaning. I chose to build an empire instead of a life. And I lost everything that mattered." The room was silent. You could hear breathing. "This clinic represents everything I should have valued from the start," I continued. "It's proof that real wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in dignity, in access, in the simple act of caring about people beyond what they can do for you." I turned to Leora. "Dr. Hale taught me that, even when I wasn't listening, even when I was too stubborn to learn." She built something extraordinary through persistence and compassion. And all I did was finally get out of my own way and try to help. Applause. But I wasn't done. I'm not here for recognition, I said. I'm here because for the first time in 8 years, I'm doing something that matters. And I want to do more. Starting tonight, I'm establishing the Hale Foundation, a separate entity with a $10 million endowment to support community health initiatives across the country. Gasps. Even Leora looked shocked. Dr. Hale will have full control, I said. Full authority. I'm just a checkbook. She's the vision. And if she'll have me, I'd like to volunteer here. Not as a donor, as someone who shows up and does the work. I looked at Leora. If you'll let me. She had tears in her eyes. Happy tears this time. Yes, she said into her microphone. Yes, we'd be honored. The room erupted in applause. People standing, cheering, celebrating something that actually deserved celebration. But the best part was Aaron. I spotted him in the crowd with a babysitter Leora must have hired for the night. He was clapping too, not understanding the full significance, but recognizing that something good was happening. Our eyes met across the room. He waved. I waved back. And for the first time since discovering he existed, I felt like maybe I could be his father. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but genuinely, honestly, with the kind of presence that mattered more than presence ever could. After the event, Leora pulled me aside. That was too much, she said, but she was smiling. It wasn't enough, I countered. I have so much to make up for. You can't buy forgiveness, Kaylin. I know, I said, but I can stop wasting resources on things that don't matter and start investing in things that do. And you matter. Aaron matters. This work matters. She looked at me for a long moment. You're different. I'm trying to be. No, she said. You are. I can see it. She stepped closer, and I barely breathed, afraid any movement would break the moment. Aaron asked about you yesterday, she said softly. He wanted to know if you'd come to his birthday party next month. I'd love to, I said, my voice rough with emotion. As a family friend, she clarified. He doesn't know yet. About you being his father. I need more time before that conversation. Whatever you need, I said. However long it takes. I'm not going anywhere. She nodded, believing me finally. Good, because I'm tired of doing this alone. You won't have to anymore, I promised. Once lost in ambition, now found in purpose. The transformation was happening, not just in me, but in us. In the possibility that maybe, just maybe, broken things could be repaired with enough patience and genuine effort. But there was still one more secret. One more layer Leora hadn't revealed. And when I discovered it, everything would make sense. If you believe in second chances and real transformation, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Drop a comment telling us about a time someone surprised you by actually changing. Your story might inspire someone who's trying to be better. We're in this together. Aaron's birthday party was at the park, the same one where we'd first met. Balloons tied to picnic tables, kids running in organized chaos, parents chatting while keeping one eye on their children. Normal, beautiful in its normalness. The kind of scene I'd driven past 1,000 times without really seeing because I was too busy racing toward the next big thing. I brought a present. Nothing extravagant, just a science kit Leora had mentioned Aaron was interested in. Age appropriate, thoughtful, the kind of gift that said I was paying attention instead of just throwing money at the problem. Aaron lit up when he saw me. Kaylin, you came. Wouldn't miss it, buddy, I said, and the word buddy felt natural. Right. He dragged me around, introducing me to his friends with the unself-conscious pride kids have before the world teaches them to be guarded. This is Kaylin. He's my mom's friend. He works at her clinic now. I did work at the clinic now. Started 2 weeks ago. 3 days a week, I showed up in scrubs instead of suits and did whatever needed doing. Filed paperwork, helped patients check in, clean exam rooms. The work was humble and necessary and made me feel useful in ways closing deals never had. The other doctors and nurses had been skeptical at first. Rich guy playing volunteer, probably looking for a photo op or tax write-off. But I showed up consistently, learned their names, asked questions instead of giving orders. earned respect through reliability instead of demanding it through status. Leora had been watching, always evaluating, always protecting Aaron from potential disappointment. But slowly, carefully, she'd been letting me in. Small increments. Supervised visits. Phone calls where Aaron would tell me about school. A fragile bridge being built plank by plank.
At the party, I found myself talking to other parents. Regular conversations about homework and soccer practice and the weird things kids said that made you question reality. I was just another adult at a birthday party, and it felt revolutionary. Leora found me as the sun started setting, golden light making everything look softer. "You're good with him," she said. "He makes it easy," I replied. "He's amazing, Leora. You raised someone incredible." "We'll see if you still think that during the teenage years," she said, but she was smiling. "I want to be there for those too," I said quietly. "The hard parts, not just the birthday parties." She looked at me seriously. "Why now? After all these years, why do you suddenly care?" "I always cared," I said. "I was just too stupid to know what caring looked like. I thought providing money was enough. I thought success meant winning at business. I was wrong about everything. And now I know that the only success that matters is the kind where the people you love feel loved," I said. "Everything else is just noise." She was quiet for a moment, watching Aaron blow out candles surrounded by friends. "I need to tell you something." My heart jumped. "Okay. I didn't keep Aaron from you out of revenge," she said. "I kept him from you out of protection. I knew that if I told you about him when I first found out I was pregnant, you would have done the right thing. You would have married me, supported us financially, and resented us forever for trapping you." The words hit hard because they were probably true. "I didn't want a father for Aaron who felt obligated," she continued. "I wanted him to have either no father at all or one who chose to be there, not someone who stayed out of duty. I would have loved him," I protested weakly. "Maybe," she said, "but you didn't love yourself. How could you love a child when you were so busy hating the parts of yourself that didn't fit your ambition? You needed to fall apart to become someone capable of being a real father." I felt tears threatening. "You let me fail. I'll let you find yourself," she corrected gently. "And then I watched to see if what you found was someone I could trust with my son's heart." And I asked, terrified of the answer. She reached out and took my hand. First time she'd voluntarily touched me beyond professional necessity. "And I think maybe you're becoming that person." Aaron ran over, breathless and happy. "Mom, can Kaylin come to my soccer game next week?" Leora looked at me, a question in her eyes. "I'd love to," I said to Aaron. Then to Leora, "If that's okay." "It's okay," she said. That night, after the party, after helping clean up, after watching Aaron fall asleep in the back seat of Leora's car from too much cake and running, she invited me in for coffee. Her apartment was modest but filled with warmth. Kids' drawings on the fridge. Photos everywhere. Aaron growing up in images I'd missed. Books stacked on every surface. A home built on love instead of money. "I have something else to tell you," Leora said, handing me coffee in a mug that said "World's Okayest Doctor." "I'm listening." "The anonymous donations," she said. "I knew it was you from the start." I blinked, surprised. "Ow, because I know you," she said simply. "Even after 8 years, I know your tells." The amount was weirdly specific. $500,000, not a round number. The timing, right after your diagnosis. The way it was structured through a shell company that you've used before for other investments. "You investigated me?" "I researched you," she corrected. "There's a difference. And what I found was that you'd been quietly changing for months before we reconnected. Selling assets, restructuring your company, setting up charitable foundations. You were already transforming before you knew about Aaron." I hadn't realized she'd been watching that closely. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I needed to see if it was real," she said. "If it would last. If you were actually different or just scared of dying. And now," she smiled, "now I think you were always this person underneath. You just forgot. Got lost in who you thought you should be instead of who you actually were." We talked until midnight. Really talked. The way we used to at Rosie's Diner when we were young and broke and certain that love and hard work could conquer anything. Except this time, we were older, wiser, scarred by our mistakes, but still willing to try. I don't expect us to pick up where we left off, I said as I was leaving. I know I destroyed what we had, but maybe we could build something new, something better. Maybe, she said, but slowly, with Aaron at the center of every decision. His needs first. Always. Always, I agreed. At the door, she stopped me. Kaylin. Yeah. Thank you for becoming someone worth letting back in. I drove home that night. Home to a penthouse I was planning to sell, too big and too empty for who I was becoming. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real peace. The kind that comes from alignment between who you are and who you're trying to be. From knowing that your days are spent on things that matter. From choosing love over achievement and discovering that love is the greater achievement. Once lost in ambition, now found in love. But Leora's power move wasn't finished. She had one more play, one more way to show me that forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was the ultimate strength. And when she revealed it, I'd finally understand what real wealth looked like. If you've ever had to rebuild trust from scratch, drop a fire emoji below. Tell us about a relationship you fought to save. Your story might give someone else hope. And don't forget to share this with someone who needs to hear that transformation is possible at any age. 6 months later, I stood in the clinic wearing scrubs that had my name embroidered over the pocket, and I was happy. Not the fake happiness that comes from success that looks good in photos. Real happiness. The kind that's quiet and steady and doesn't need an audience to validate it. Kaylin, can you help with exam room 3? One of the nurses called. On it, I said, grabbing supplies. This was my life now. 3 days a week at the clinic, 2 days consulting with my former company in a drastically reduced role, and weekends with Aaron and Leora. Teaching Aaron to ride a bike without training wheels. Helping with homework. Showing up for soccer games and school plays. Being present. Actually present. I'd sold the penthouse. Bought a normal house in a normal neighborhood with a yard where Aaron could play. Donated most of my expensive art collection to museums. Kept one car, the reasonable one. Restructured my entire life around what mattered instead of what impressed. And the strangest thing happened. I stopped caring what anyone thought. Former colleagues whispered that I'd lost my edge. Business magazines ran articles analyzing my fall from grace. My net worth dropped from mind-boggling to merely very comfortable. And I felt lighter with every dollar I released back into the world where it could do actual good. Leora had become my boss in the most literal sense. I reported to her at the clinic, took direction from her, deferred to her judgment on everything. And it felt right. She'd earned this, built this, created something that would outlast both of us and help thousands of people along the way. The ultimate power reversal. The millionaire working under the guidance of the woman he'd once dismissed. And I was grateful for it. That evening, we sat on Leora's porch watching Aaron chase fireflies in the yard. Summer evening, warm and perfect, the kind of moment that doesn't cost anything, but is worth everything. I have something to tell you, Leora said. I'd learned to brace myself when she said that. It usually meant something significant. Aaron knows, she said quietly. My heart stopped. Knows what? That you're his father. She looked at me carefully. I told him last week. We talked about it. About why I kept it secret, about how you didn't know, about how you've been trying to be part of his life now. And I could barely get the word out. He has questions, she said. He's processing. But he doesn't hate you. He's actually excited, in that cautious way kids get when they're trying to protect themselves from disappointment. Can I talk to him about it? He wants to talk to you, she said. Now, actually, if you're ready. I stood up, legs shaking slightly. I'm ready. Aaron came over, hands cupped around a firefly he'd caught. Kaylin, Mom says I should call you Dad. If I want, simple words. Devastating impact. Only if you want to, I managed. No pressure. Whatever feels right to you. He looked at the firefly glowing between his fingers. Will you leave again? Like before. I was never here before. I said honestly, crouching down to his level. And that's my biggest regret. But I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere unless you want me to go. Promise? I promise, I said. Being your dad is the most important thing I'll ever do. More important than any job or money or anything else. He studied me with those serious eyes that saw more than kids should have to. Then, carefully, he released the firefly. We watched it float away, glowing against the darkening sky. "Okay," he said, "you could be my dad." And just like that, the last broken piece clicked into place. We talked for an hour, Aaron asking questions, me answering honestly even when the answers made me look bad. Leora, sitting close, supervising, ready to intervene if needed, but letting us navigate this new territory together. Later, after Aaron went to bed, Leora and I stayed on the porch. "There's one more thing," she said. "There's always one more thing with you," I teased gently. She smiled. "The real reason I let you back in. The reason I was watching you before we reconnected. The reason I documented your changes and pushed you toward this transformation. Okay, I never stopped loving you," she said quietly. "Even when I hated what you'd become. Even when I was raising Aaron alone and furious at your choices. Under all of it, I still love the person you used to be. The person I hoped you could become again." I couldn't breathe. "Forgiveness wasn't about being nice," she continued. "It was strategic. It was me betting on the possibility that people can change if they want it badly enough. That the man I loved was still in there somewhere, just buried under ambition and fear. You were testing me. I was giving you a chance to save yourself," she corrected. "The clinic, the donations, letting you meet Aaron, all of it was designed to show you what real success looks like. To prove that wealth without purpose is just expensive emptiness." "It worked," I said. "You saved me." "No." She shook her head. "You saved yourself. I just pointed you in the right direction." She took my hand, and this time the touch wasn't tentative or supervised. It was deliberate. "Certain. I'm not saying we're back together," she clarified. "We're not picking up where we left off 8 years ago. Those people don't exist anymore. But maybe we could build something new. The people we are now, with all our scars and lessons and understanding of what matters." "I like that," I said, and my voice cracked. "More than anything." Slowly, she insisted. "With Aaron's well-being as the priority. With honesty and patience and no shortcuts." "Whatever it takes," I said. "However long." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we sat there in the summer darkness, listening to crickets and distant traffic and the sound of our own breathing. Two people who'd taken very different paths to end up in the same place. Two people who'd learned that the hardest journey isn't climbing to the top. It's finding your way back to what matters when you've lost yourself at the summit. My phone buzzed. A text from my former assistant. "Forbes still wants that interview. Legacy piece about your transformation. They're calling it The Millionaire Who Chose Love." Interested, I looked at the message for a long moment. Old me would have jumped at the publicity, would have seen it as validation, proof that I'd made the right choices, would have needed the world to witness my redemption to believe it was real. But I didn't need that anymore. I deleted the text without responding. "What was that?" Leora asked. "Nothing important," I said. "Just someone asking for something I don't need to give anymore." She smiled, understanding without explanation. That was the thing about people who really knew you. They could read the meaning in your silences. 3 months later, the clinic held another gala. Bigger this time, celebrating the opening of their second location. I was there, but not on stage. Not giving speeches or cutting ribbons. Just in the crowd, wearing a regular suit instead of a designer one. Applauding while Leora accepted recognition for her work. This was her moment. Her achievement. And my job was simple. Show up and be proud. Support without overshadowing. Contribute without controlling. Aaron stood next to me, dressed in a button-up shirt he'd picked out himself, watching his mother with obvious pride. "Mom's pretty cool, huh?" "The coolest," I agreed. "You're cool too," he added generously. "For Dad." I laughed, ruffling his hair. High praise coming from you. After the ceremony, we drove home together. The three of us in one car now. A family still learning the choreography of being a family, but committed to the practice. Aaron fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the excitement. Leora and I drove in comfortable silence, her hand resting on mine over the console. No words needed, just the quiet understanding that we'd survived our own bad choices and come out the other side committed to making better ones. At home, I carried Aaron inside while Leora unlocked the door. He mumbled something incoherent about soccer and homework as I laid him in bed, still fully dressed except for his shoes. Leora covered him with a blanket, kissed his forehead, and we stood there together watching him sleep. You know what the real power move was? I whispered. What? Not revenge. Not making me suffer. Just becoming so completely, authentically successful that my old world became irrelevant. You didn't need to destroy me. You just needed to build something better and wait for me to notice. She smiled in the darkness. Took you long enough. 8 years too long, I agreed. But I'm here now. Yes, she said, taking my hand again. You are. We walked to the porch, our porch now. I'd officially moved in 2 weeks ago, Aaron helping me unpack boxes with the enthusiasm only kids can bring to mundane tasks. We sat in the same spots we'd occupied that first evening when everything started shifting back into alignment. The city lights glowed in the distance. The same lights I used to look down on from my penthouse, feeling powerful and empty. Now I looked at them from ground level, feeling humble and full. The perspective shift made all the difference. I used to think wealth was about what you owned, I said quietly. The buildings with your name on them. The cars. The accounts with too many zeros to count. But that's not wealth. No, Leora asked, though she knew where I was going. Wealth is this, I said, gesturing to the house behind us where our son slept. To the woman beside me who'd given me a second chance I hadn't deserved. To the life we were building together one intentional day at a time. Wealth is coming home to people who are genuinely happy to see you, who love you for who you are, not what you can do for them, who challenge you to be better without needing you to be perfect. Sounds like you've learned something, she said. I've learned everything, I corrected. Thanks to you. Thanks to losing you and finding my way back. She leaned against me, and I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. Natural. Easy, right? Once lost in ambition, I said softly, repeating the mantra that had become my truth. Now found in love, she finished. We sat there as night deepened around us, two people who'd taken the long, painful route to understanding what mattered. Two people who discovered that redemption isn't about erasing your mistakes. It's about learning from them and choosing differently going forward. Inside, Aaron stirred in his sleep. Outside, the world kept turning. And here, on this porch, in this moment, with this family we were carefully, lovingly reconstructing, I finally understood what success really meant. It wasn't about climbing higher. It was about finding your footing. It wasn't about accumulating more. It was about appreciating enough. It wasn't about winning at any cost. It was about knowing when to stop keeping score. He wasn't the man she left. He was the man who finally learned that true wealth isn't in what you own. It's in who you come home to. If you've made it this far, you're part of something special. This isn't just a story. It's a reminder that it's never too late to choose differently. Never too late to rebuild what you've broken. Never too late to realize that love is the only empire worth building. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss our next story. Turn on notifications because we're bringing you more tales of transformation, redemption, and the kind of love that heals instead of harms. Drop a comment telling us what moment hit you hardest. Share this with someone who needs to remember that second chances are real if you're willing to do the work. Tell us, what would you choose? The empire or the love? The corner office or the front porch? The monument with your name on it or the family that knows your heart? We're all on this journey together, learning that true success is measured in moments like these. In quiet evenings, and sleeping children, and the hand you hold when nobody's watching. Thank you for being part of this family. For listening, for caring, for believing that people can change when they want it badly enough. Until the next story, choose love. Always choose love. Because in the end, that's the only choice that really matters.